Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you are aware of the fact that the opening is one of the most important aspects of the chess game. Because if you have a good opening, you're going to have a good position for the middle game, and if you play a good middle game, then you're going to have a perfect position for the end game. That is the perfect outcome. And out of the opening, you can also directly win if you manage to beat your opponent in the opening, which is going to allow you an even quicker win, an even quicker rating gain, and an even quicker explosion into the next elo range. Which is why today you are going to learn about the Caro Kann defense, the best opening for black, and for that we are going to have to choose the other side. And now, after they play e4, what are you going to play? Well, the Caro Kann, c6, right? So here there are multiple possibilities. They can develop the bishop, they can develop the knights, but the most popular one, which I'm going to cover first, is going to be this move d4, putting two pawns in the center. Now to complete the Caro Kann, you're going to have to play d5, and now again they have multiple options. You see, chess is a complicated game with multiple branches, but the most popular move again is pushing here. You can see we now have a perfect path to develop the bishop, so we cannot develop it here obviously because the queen would take. We cannot develop it here and here neither, and we do not want the bishop to be that passive. So this is literally the perfect square that we can develop it on. So now the opponent plays a random move. What do we want to do? We want to develop the other pieces. Okay, the knight. Yeah, the knight is a good option. What else can we do? Okay, we cannot develop this knight because over here it would be pretty bad. It would double our pawns. And we want to get this bishop out. Okay, I'm going to play e6. And all of a sudden the opponent attacks me. Wait, what is this about? Okay, I go back, he attacks me once again. I go over here and he attacks me even one more time. I cannot take because it's protected twice, and I literally have no square. My bishop is trapped, which is why this leads us to our first trap. If the opponent plays h4, you're going to play this move h5. Now the reason you're going to play this move h5 is because now obviously they cannot attack you, and you also have a few more squares, which is why h6 would also be good enough, because then you can hide the bishop. But that opens the room for other disadvantages, which is why I advise you to play h5. This is the more safe and the more simple option, which is why just remember h5 and you're going to be good. What happens if they want to trade the bishop? Well, then we're simply going to trade. They take with the queen. Obviously they don't want to double the pawns, and now after they take with the queen, what are we going to do? Okay, we want to develop the other pieces like in any other opening, so we're going to play e6, so they cannot push e6, because let's say we now develop the knight, they push e6. Okay, our knight is under attack. If we move the knight away, they're going to take with check, and our king is white in the center, and so obviously we do not want that. And if we manage to push here, they're going to be able to take the knight, so obviously we have to take. But now this diagonal over here is open, and it makes our king a little bit more vulnerable, which is why we don't allow this e6 move, and we play e6 instead. So this is very important. Always play e6. This is a very crucial move in the Caro Kann, and you also complete this beautiful pyramid and connect these pawns as well, which is going to benefit you in the future. So let's see what happens afterwards. Okay, they develop the knight, you push, and after they take, you take back directly. Okay, now they're going to give a check. They have a fork, and the reason I advise you to do this, I'm going to show you a second variation. This is going to be a little bit more complicated to learn, but trust me, it's worth studying this line, because people tend to play this quite often. So you push, they're going to take, and you take back as well. Now they're going to give a check with the queen, and you block with the knight over here. They're going to be able to take another pawn, but this is not going to affect you at all. You're simply going to attack. They cannot take this pawn, it's protected by the bishop, so they're just going to go away. Now you're going to develop the knight, continue with your development. You can even try to kick the queen out once again, but while it does benefit you a little bit, you shouldn't be doing that, because they're just simply going to go away. So this is just a little bit of a waste of time. Instead, just develop the knight. This is what I like to do. And after that, you're going to complete the development with castling. That way, you're going to have an even better position, okay? And this is basically the position you get out of the opening from here. So other things that could happen is after they develop, you push. They take, you're going to develop the knight, because you do not want to allow this check over here. So after that, they're going to try to hold on to the pawn, which is going to make the whole thing a little bit more annoying. but you can get that pawn at some point back, so it doesn't really make that big of a difference. You can also get it like this. So you could just develop the knight if you want to keep it simple and don't want to remember the line. It is literally not that big of a difference, so you don't have to worry about that. What else can I show you in the advanced variation? If they don't develop the bishop, they develop the knight instead, you're going to play e6 again, which is why I told you e6 is a very important move. Just bring out the other bishop. If they develop here, you're going to push. Also, this c5 pawn break is very important. You're making space for the knight over here, and you're also intending to develop the bishop while knocking out at the opponent's center, which is obviously very important. So if they take, obviously you take back. Opponents usually might not take. They might want to waste time a little bit, to which you are just going to develop the knight, put a little bit more pressure, but they don't have to take now either. What you can do is you can put even more pressure, which your opponent may crumble and they may play something like this, which then leads to you be able to take over here. But instead, if they now take, you're going to have to be a little bit careful, because they might be able to get your bishop, which is going to be very annoying. Perhaps you like it, perhaps not. Depends on whether you want to trade it or not. The position here is still equal, so it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So you can do that as well. And after this specific variation that I just showed you over here, the opponent's pawn is alone in the center. You're able to develop your knight. Let me show you a few continuation moves. You're simply going to slide back slide or go away. You're simply going to develop the knight, and after a few developing moves, you're going to castle as well. Your king is going to be in safety, and now you have a normal position. The good thing about the Caro Kann is that it usually presents the same similar positions. So if they develop the other knight, you also have to play e6, which is very important again. And other variations like this, tricky variations, which don't allow you to play e6, you're just going to go over here. If they push, you then feel free to play e6. After that, you can develop your bishop, trade it off, and you're going to be good to go. So this is simply just another variation. What happens if they don't push the pawn, okay? The reason this is a crash course is because I'm trying to keep it simple. Obviously, there are more variations to this, so you have to be careful with it. And if you really want to go out there and perform at a very, very high level, you're going to have to study it a little longer. But I also have to keep this video short, so I'm trying to give you the compact, the condensed information, which is really tight and is going to allow you to get the most out of a very short video. So you can go out there and win 90% of your games, or at least get a good position out of 90% of your games. So that's why I'm going to try to keep it shorter. Now here, they can also take. If they take, you're just simply going to take back. And now the opponent may play the Panov Attack. This is a very annoying move, because they're trying to be overly aggressive. And you just have to meet it with this move e6 again. If they take, you're just going to take back. But usually they try to put even more pressure on it. So after that, I would just try to give in a little bit, develop their bishop, yes, and just try to stay compact. If they give a check, I would want you to be careful about this pawn when the queen is out over there. So that's why I showed you the check with the queen, because if you now go here, they're going to be able to go here. And yes, you have a little trap, but it is not always assured, so you should be careful with it in this specific scenario. So yeah, just develop all your pieces. Be cautious about this pawn. After they complete their development, always try to not ruin your pawn structures and such, because this can also be quite annoying. So in such a scenario over here, what can you do? There isn't really much you can do. A specific thing that you can do is you can bring back the bishop over here, and after they take, you're going to take back, put even more pressure over here, and you can also, after they develop, you're just simply going to castle. This just to show you a few short ideas so that you can understand the positions that the Caro Kann brings. Because obviously, for your opening repertoire, it's very important that you are familiar with the positions and that you see the different ideas. That's why I'm showing you a little bit. It's like you have a private coaching session with me, but I'm going on a rant about the Caro Kann. This is literally what I'm doing right now. So let's see what else goes into the Panov Attack. If they then decide to trade, you're just simply going to complete the development. If they ever give a check, I advise you to block with the knight, because if they ever take, which they don't always, but if they ever take, you're simply going to have this pawn protecting this other pawn in the center. You're going to have this beautiful square for the bishop over here. You're going to develop the other bishop as well, and then castle, which is going to give you a good position once again. Now let's pretend that they're not going to trade. You're simply going to keep it simple, castle, and at some point you can kick them out. They can either decide to go back or after that take, which is not that big of a difference, and it doesn't really matter that much. So you can do something like this. You have to be careful about playing rook to e8 here, because after take, they're going to be able to double the pawns. So I would always be cautious about such moves. Playing g5, I'm sorry, playing g5 over here, it depends. It depends on the context. In this specific scenario, I wouldn't recommend it, but it is not that big of a deal. You have opened your king a little bit and you have to be cautious, but even now you can just develop the bishop over here and your king is quite safe. So yeah, it is something that you can do, but you do not want to leave yourself open to such sacrifices, which can be very annoying. And let me turn on the engine. This is not even bad. So sacrificing the knight over here is literally the second best move for the engine. If they go back, it's still better, but sacrificing can be very, very tricky to defend against, and I'm sure a better opponent would attempt to do this against you. So I wouldn't always recommend playing this move g5. Instead, you can even go back a little bit and try to do something like this. And if they jump in, you just have to keep it as simple as possible and try to get some counter attack on the other side of the board. Okay, into the exchange variation, there is also another variation with something like this, but specifically in all variations, you're just going to try to develop all your pieces as simple as possible on the best squares that you can see, and after that you're going to have an easy time. Now, here my bishop is on g4 pinning the knight, but I wanted to teach you about this, so let me go back real quick and change the move order. I'm going to do this to change the move order a little bit, to make it a little bit more interesting. Now, something like knight to e5 is usually very annoying. I advise you to place the queen on c7, but always be cautious if your bishop is here. Otherwise, you're going to be open to discovered attacks. If the bishop wasn't there, let's say, you just develop this and you go here, all of a sudden you are open to a bunch of discovered attacks, which can be very, very annoying. And after something like this, you have a losing position. So you do have to be careful about whether your bishop is on that square when you play queen to c7. I wouldn't advise you to place the queen in between a piece that is able to have some sort of discovered attack. Don't do that at all. But in this specific scenario, the opponent can try to be as annoying as possible. You shouldn't take though. Just try to castle, and yes, the opponent can be a little bit aggressive. Do not play h3 because that opens room for sacrifices, and you do not want to open this up. So if they ever play something like this, trying to open it up because they want to infiltrate with the rook, you then have to calculate whether or not it's good, but that is something for another video. I'm definitely ranting a lot about different positions, but I'm trying to give you as best of an understanding as you can get. So developing the knight used to be a very popular move back in the day. So now after you take, they take back with the knight, and you're going to develop the knight again. The classical way to do it back in the day when we didn't have an engine is to attack with the bishop, they attack your bishop back and you slide. And after they develop, you start to play h5 if you're aggressive. This is something that you used to do back in the day, but I advise you to play a better variation. This is the Tartakower. After they take, you're going to take back with the pawn, and this pawn may seem counterintuitive because you do want a clear pawn structure, but this pawn is actually going to help your king safety after you castle. Another pawn on top of your king is going to make it more tricky for your opponent to get in, and from that position you're just simply going to develop your pieces. A good opponent is going to play bishop to e3 to d3, simply because that doesn't allow you to place your bishop on the much better square f5. If you play against a more experienced opponent, I advise you to just castle. Do not develop your bishop on this square. Just keep your bishop underdeveloped, simply because after you castle and they castle, and you're going, and let's say you develop your bishop over here, then you're simply going to be open for a bunch of attacks. And now this may not seem as bad, and this isn't as bad when the king is castled, but it's still not a comfortable position to have, because this file can get very annoying with the rook if they slide the king down and bring the rook over. So what I advise you to do instead is keep the development simple. First develop the knight or even the rook on an open file. Then if they try develop the knight, do something like this, and you can see they're going to have a pretty difficult time. Maneuver the knight correctly in a good position, and from there on you can decide whether or not you want to trade. You can also develop your bishop a bit more passively, or you can develop your bishop a little later down the line in some variations like this, or you can even trade for the knight. This is something that I could have told you earlier as well, but usually keeping the bishop in such a position is better. As you can see, you're already beaming the enemy, and instead, if they, let's say you decide to trade, you can now play something like this, but of course without allowing queen to e8. But just as an idea, in the future, the c7 and the d6 bishop usually are a very good combo to go down this diagonal, because let me just demonstrate. Of course, again, they have queen to e8 in this variation, but you can make them play this move g3, and after that you're going to be able to infiltrate with the bishop and annoy them very much, which is going to make your position even better. Okay, so let me just recap real quick, so we have a clear recap of what is going on. They're going to take, you're going to take back, you're simply going to develop, castle, castle, and then keep it simple with the development, right? You can even wait on this rook to e8 move, develop the knight first. Develop the bishop a bit more passively is also an option, but keep in mind that they're going to try to play this, so you cannot go into this square, and this is going to allow you to have a good position. In this specific variation, you have a equal position. I just turned on the engine to check, just to let you know, and even from a feeling perspective, this position is not bad for you at all. So castle before moving out the bishop here in the Tartakower, and you're going to be good to go. Now I'd like to show you more variations, and one of them is this fantasy variation, right? You may think, okay, takes, and now I'm simply going to develop the knight. Nope, this is not a good way. This is not a good way, because you have different things. You have many different things, okay? I want to play this move. I do not want to keep it passive, because if you keep it too passive, your opponent is going to overrun you. They're going to simply complete the development quickly. They're going to bring every piece out, castle, and attack this f7 square, which is very popular in the fantasy variation, which is why they even offer this pawn trade to open up this diagonal after castle, okay? This file after castle together with this diagonal. So what I want you to do is, after take, you play e5. If they take, you may think, okay, I'm just trading the queens, they can't castle, but no. You're giving a check, and this is going to remind you of another opening. If they push, you're going to take and fork the queen and the king. I'm sorry, you're going to fork the king and the rook, obviously. So instead, if they're not going to take, they can also go down or try to run away, to which you're just going to continue your development. You're going to be absolutely fine after something like this. They're going to want to trade. You're going to annoy them even more because you don't want to, and this is something that you can do. So obviously they're not going to trade, they're going to know the line, and here you're just going to develop, And from here on, there are multiple moves that they can do. Many of them play c3. You're simply going to develop the knight over here to make sure that this pawn cannot be taken. If they do take it though, you're not going to take back right away. You're either going to develop the bishop, or you're going to take this knight first, and after they take back with the queen, you're then going to be able to take this knight off from here. This is something that you need to remember. Instead, what they can do from here is they can also just develop the bishop to many different squares. What you're going to do, you're simply going to complete your development. Keep it very simple. They're going to castle, just reinforce this pawn. Even something like bishop to e7 is very fine. And what I recommend you to do here is after they develop the knight over here, I just strongly advise you to castle, because the fantasy variation is a very tricky variation. Now, I'm going to have to make a video alone on the fantasy variation, just so you know how to defend it, because it's a very tricky opening, and there are many different lines where the queen comes out to attack this pawn, and if you defend it, then they're going to have another counter attack. So just so you know, this is something that you need to play in the fantasy variation. Just keep it simple with the move e5 over here, and if they take, remember the line. If they don't take, they develop the bishop, you develop your bishop, and you're going to be completely fine, okay? Another variation that you're going to encounter is the two knights, where you're just going to take, and like in the Tartakower, you just want to do something like this, okay? Then after that, they're going to continue with their development, and you're going to do the same. Like in the Tartakower, you're going to have this pawn over here, and you're simply going to develop your pieces. You're going to have a normal game, and you can see that's why I'm telling you the Caro Kann is a very good opening to learn, because it is very much straightforward. To show you a few other ideas that you can get from this opening is, okay, let's say they developed a bishop. You're going to put the queen on this diagonal again, which is why I have shown it in the other variations, is because you are going to have this idea multiple moves. And another way to defend against this for them is to play this, because this isn't actually a threat. Giving this check isn't actually a threat. The threat was just attacking the pawn. But being on this diagonal alone and being able to attack in the future is a liability for them, and it's going to allow you to get a good position. Out of the two knights, there are different variations that they can play, but in all of them, I just want you to develop your pieces correctly, like I have advised you in the rest of the video, and you're simply going to have a very successful demeanor, a very successful game, and there is not much that you can do wrong in the Caro Kann. Playing is actually more important than studying in the Caro Kann, because the mistakes that you do in the Caro Kann, you are going to be able to see them in the analysis afterwards, which is why you need to analyze all of your games afterwards. One more variation I want to show you before I end this video is the Beyer Variation, is where they try to trade this queen and go into an endgame right away. The reason this is good for them is because this is very highly favored by grandmasters, right? And you're going to have different variations, but as long as you're going to keep it simple, you can see this pawn acts like a protection for this knight, and overall, the liability for them not being able to castle, being in an endgame, is not going to affect them that much, and they're going to be able to compensate for it, and you're just going to have to know how to play an endgame, or at least just keeping it solid, trade all the pieces down. And of course this bishop was hanging the whole time, I saw it, but I'm just demonstrating the things that they can do, okay? So yeah, I'm sure you're wondering why I haven't covered a specific variation that White loves to play against the Caro Kann. It's the Alien Gambit. And of course, the reason I did not want to address it is because I wanted to make a separate video on it, like on the fantasy variation, so make sure to subscribe to the channel, because in the near future I'm going to make a completely new video based on the Alien Gambit alone, and it needs a video for itself alone, because it's such a tricky opening that you play against, and it's such aggressive for White that you need to be very careful, which is why Witty Alien is able to play this against grandmasters and surprise them, and even win games against very strong people. So we are going to need the engine, and we are going to need a lot of different lines that we need to take a look at, which is why I'm going to make another video. Just a quick tip: if you play against the alien Gambit, what I advise you to do is to keep it simple. Just do not invite it, okay? I know it sounds a little bit being scared, but this is the more safe thing to do. Just keep your development steady, you're going to be completely fine. And if they do decide to sacrifice, you having developed a bishop first, for example, is going to allow you to gain even more protection, as they cannot develop as many things. You can then play something like e6 over here. So just do not invite it right away. I know it's tricky, but trust me, until I make the video, you're better off without it, okay? Peace.